"She's beautiful, Papa." The fat bride was ridiculed until a little girl spoke up. The twin suns of the desert planet Iridia hung low in the sky, casting long golden shadows across the small frontier town of Dusthaven. Wooden shacks jutted out from the sand like old teeth, their peeling paint shimmering faintly in the sun. Hovering shuttles clunked softly as they landed on the town's narrow streets, their engines making a gentle hum that mixed with the caws of distant skybirds. Life here was simple, slow, and harsh, but Dusthaven had a rhythm all its own. Mara adjusted the glowing threads on her wedding dress, trying not to notice the whispers that followed her as she walked through the town square. The dress was her pride, soft, cream-colored fabric intertwined with fine light fibers that pulsed gently, like a heartbeat. It gave her a faint glow in the sunlight, not to impress anyone, but because her bridegroom had wanted her to feel special. She smoothed the folds of the skirt over her legs and took a deep breath. Today was supposed to be her happiest day, but the weight of the town's judgment pressed on her heart. "Look at her," a woman whispered, barely audible but sharp enough to sting. "I can't believe she's the one marrying young Sheriff Dale. Isn't she a little big?"
Big?
"She's enormous," another man snickered. "The bride should look like a vision, not that." Mara's cheeks burned. She kept walking, her head bowed, wishing she could disappear into the warm golden haze of the desert. She could hear the laughter and whispers, the way every eye seemed to flick to her, silently judging. She felt a tight knot in her stomach. She had always known she didn't fit the ideal mold of beauty Dusthaven seemed to adore, but today the town reminded her of it openly. At the edge of the square, a little girl with bright eyes and untamed hair watched the scene. Lila was 7, small for her age but fearless, and she had never understood why people found fun in hurting others. Her small hands were clenched into fists as she followed Mara with her gaze. There was something about Mara that made Lila feel warm inside. It wasn't the glowing threads of her dress or the way the light shimmered around her. It was her calm, gentle smile that dared to survive all the cruelty. The bride paused near the market where stalls of glowing fruits and hovering gadgets gave a faint neon glow in the dust. Mara tried to focus on the vendors, the familiar smell of roasted nuts, the hum of machinery, but the whispers followed her like shadows. She could hear the laughter even over the hum of the shuttle engines. "I think the dress is too big for her," one man said, nudging his friend. "It makes her look heavier." The friend chuckled, not out of humor, but from a place of habit. In Dusthaven, teasing was normal, even expected. It was how people passed the time in the slow desert. But Mara felt the sting. She adjusted the glowing threads of her dress again, running her hands over the fabric. The light was soft, almost like a whisper of comfort, but it could not erase the judgment in the air. Lila, however, felt a spark of anger. The little girl crossed the square quickly, her small boots kicking up clouds of fine golden sand. She approached Mara slowly, not wanting to scare her but determined to say something. "Hi," Lila said softly. "You look really nice today." Mara blinked in surprise. She looked down at the little girl, unsure if she should smile. "Thank you," she said, her voice quiet. Lila's eyes were bright. "Everyone is being mean," she said simply, "but you're still beautiful." Mara's chest tightened. She had heard the word beautiful rarely in her life, and certainly not in this town. The little girl's honesty, pure and fearless, was like a cool drink of water in the hot desert. Mara felt a small, unfamiliar warmth begin to grow in her chest. "Thank you, sweet one," Mara said, crouching slightly so she could meet Lila's gaze. That means a lot." The crowd, sensing the pause, quieted for a moment. They were used to seeing Mara shrink under their eyes, used to seeing her endure silently. But the little girl's words carried a kind of power that was simple yet undeniable. The morning moved slowly. Mara walked toward the town hall where her wedding was to take place. The streets were lined with more townsfolk, some whispering, some outright laughing. Hovering lanterns floated above the square, casting tiny reflections on Mara's glowing dress. She could hear a few mutterings, but she also began to notice something new. A few villagers looked away, suddenly unsure of themselves. Lila followed, hopping over small rocks and dust mounds, holding tightly to Mara's hand for a moment before letting go to run ahead. "Don't let them make you sad," Lila said suddenly, her voice louder now. "You are beautiful, and they're just wrong." Mara felt a tear threaten to escape, but she blinked it back. There was something extraordinary in the little girl's courage. She had been taught that happiness was something quiet, something private, something carefully hidden. But Lila didn't care about rules. She only cared about truth. By the time Mara reached the steps of the town hall, a small crowd had gathered. Some of the villagers were curious, some judgmental, but a few were already quiet, unsure how to respond. Mara stood tall, letting the light of her dress pulse softly, matching the rhythm of her heartbeat. Lila, now standing beside the steps, shouted, "She's beautiful, don't you see?" The words echoed across the square. The laughter stopped abruptly. The whispers faded. Even the adults looked at Mara differently now, almost as if the little girl had cast a spell over the town. Mara's eyes widened, and she felt something shift inside her. For the first time, she wasn't just enduring their judgment. She was beginning to see herself as Lila saw her. Radiant, kind, worthy. Sheriff Jonah, Mara's father, appeared at the top of the steps. His usual stern expression softened as he watched his daughter's glowing dress and the brave little girl standing beside her. He could see the pride, the dignity, the gentle confidence beginning to bloom in Mara. The sheriff's chest swelled with quiet relief. He had known the town's cruelty, had hoped his daughter could withstand it, but now he saw something more. She could shine, even in the harshest sunlight of their desert frontier. Mara inhaled deeply. The townsfolk's words still lingered like shadows in the corners of her mind, but she forced herself to let them fade. Today she decided she would not shrink. Today she would step forward and let herself be seen, fully and entirely for who she was. The twin suns blazed brighter as the wind swept across the square, lifting strands of Lila's hair like tiny banners. Mara's dress glowed in soft waves, reflecting the warmth in her heart. People began to murmur again, but this time with curiosity rather than mockery. Some older women nodded subtly, remembering how it felt to be judged. Some men lowered their heads, embarrassed by their own laughter, earlier. Mara felt the subtle shift in the town, a gentle change beginning to bloom. Lila grabbed Mara's hand again, tugging her forward. "Come on," she said, smiling. "They'll see." "You really are beautiful." And Mara, feeling that spark ignite inside her, took the first step up into the town hall. Her heart beat steadily, her glow bright and unwavering. Dusthaven would not define her. The judgment of others could not touch the joy she carried now, not when the truth of a little girl's words shone clearer than any whisper of cruelty. The wedding was still hours away, the town still buzzing with whispers and curiosity, but Mara felt something entirely new. Hope. She could feel the energy of possibility in every step, every pulse of the glowing threads. She wasn't just walking toward a ceremony. She was walking toward a new understanding of herself, of beauty, and of the courage to be proud no matter what others thought. And Lila, standing proudly by her side, clapped her small hands and cheered softly. "See, Papa? She's beautiful." She always was. Mara smiled, a tear finally sliding down her cheek, not from sadness, but from a quiet, radiant joy. In the heart of Dusthaven, under the twin suns, Mara began to shine, and for the first time, the town could not look away. The sun climbed higher in the twin skies of Iridia, casting its golden light across Dusthaven. The town was quiet now, a rare pause in its usual bustle. Mara stood at the top of the town hall steps, her glowing dress shimmering softly, catching the attention of everyone gathered below. The soft pulse of the lights in her fabric matched the rhythm of her heart. She could feel the curious eyes of the townspeople on her, weighing her, judging her, but she also felt something else, the courage that little Lila had given her. Lila tugged gently at Mara's hand. "Come on," she said. "You have to walk." "Let them see you." Mara nodded, taking a deep breath. Her father, Sheriff Jonah, watched from the side, his stern eyes softened with pride. He knew the town had mocked Mara for years, and he had worried that even the smallest ridicule would crush her spirit. But he saw something different now. He saw light, not just from her dress, but from within her. With Lila by her side, Mara stepped down into the square. The townsfolk shuffled, some looking embarrassed, some unsure how to act. The usual whispers and laughter were muted, replaced by a tense, curious silence. Mara's eyes scanned the crowd. She spotted faces that had sneered at her, others that had laughed. Now, she held her chin high, her steps deliberate and proud. "She's glowing," muttered one man quietly. "That's beautiful," a woman whispered, unable to hide her awe. Lila jumped onto a low crate to be seen above the crowd. Her small voice rang clear. "She's beautiful, Papa. Don't you see? She's beautiful." The words cut through the dusty silence, echoing across the square. Mara felt her chest swell. It was simple, yes, but powerful. A child's honesty had more weight than the town's years of ridicule. Mara had always been polite, quiet, and willing to endure the whispers. But now something shifted inside her. She felt brave. She felt free. Mara continued walking, slowly letting the glow of her dress pulse brighter. The town square, usually filled with judgment and gossip, seemed to transform around her. The hovering lanterns above reflected the soft, pulsing light of her dress, scattering gentle colors across the sand and wooden stalls. It was almost magical, and even the adults began to notice the change. The little girl's bravery had opened a door. A few of the villagers looked away, ashamed of the way they had treated Mara. Some older women whispered among themselves, remembering the times they had been mocked for their own appearances. A quiet hum of understanding started to rise, soft and tender like the first breeze after a long drought. "Look at her smile," said a man quietly, his voice small, almost afraid. "She doesn't care what we think." Maybe we've been wrong," muttered another. Mara felt her heart lift. She had spent years trying to hide her insecurities, trying to disappear in her own home, in her own town. But now, with Lila's words echoing in the square, she realized that her worth wasn't measured by anyone's opinion. It was measured by the joy she carried in her heart and the love that awaited her in the life she was about to begin. The ceremony was still a few hours away, but the energy in the town square had shifted. Vendors paused their work to watch Mara's gentle walk, their expressions softening. Children peeked out from behind carts, curious, inspired by the little girl standing on the crate shouting, "She's beautiful." Mara stopped near the center of the square and looked around. She saw the shimmer of light on the dusty streets, the glow of her dress reflecting in the eyes of those watching. She took another deep breath and let herself smile fully, a smile that reached her eyes and spread warmth through her chest. Lila's hand slipped into hers again, small and strong, a quiet anchor in the chaos of attention. Suddenly a soft chime echoed through the square. Mara turned her head slightly and saw the town's small, hovering camera drones, their lenses blinking as they floated above, recording the scene. Normally these drones documented town events in simple, routine ways, birthdays, deliveries, and minor celebrations, but today they captured something extraordinary. Mara's radiant walk, accompanied by Lila's fearless voice, was being broadcast across Dust Haven and beyond. Settlements from nearby valleys and deserts would see this, and perhaps even towns Mara had never imagined, her glowing dress and proud smile shining as a message of hope. Sheriff Jonah stepped closer to Mara. "They're watching," he said quietly, nodding toward the drones. "Not just the town. Maybe everyone on Iridia." Mara's pulse quickened. She felt a mix of fear and excitement. The thought that her courage, inspired by a little girl, could reach far beyond Dust Haven made her chest pound. But she felt ready. She felt strong. She felt beautiful. The townspeople began to murmur again, this time not in ridicule, but in quiet awe. Mara noticed some of the younger women whispering to each other, their eyes wide, as if they were seeing a new way of being. Some of the men straightened their shoulders, their pride mingled with a sense of embarrassment for having judged too quickly. The change was subtle, but it was real. Lila, seeing the shift in the crowd, clapped her hands and shouted, "See? I told you! She's beautiful." The little girl's laughter rang like a bell across the square. Mara's heart swelled with warmth. She had never heard such pure, fearless honesty in her life, and it touched something deep within her. Slowly, Mara began to speak, her voice quiet but steady. "Thank you, everyone," she said, "for listening and for seeing me. I know I am different from what you expected a bride to be, but I hope you can see that I am still me, and I am proud of who I am." The words hung in the air. The town had heard her speak not with anger, not with fear, but with dignity. There was a long pause, and then a ripple of quiet applause began, soft at first, then growing steadily. Mara felt tears prick at her eyes, not of sadness, but of relief and joy. The town was beginning to understand. Lila ran up to Mara and hugged her small legs around Mara's knees. "See?" she said again, smiling. "I told you." Mara knelt down and hugged her back, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. The little girl had reminded her of something she had almost forgotten, that truth and courage could shine brighter than judgment and ridicule. Sheriff Jonah approached, placing a protective hand on Mara's shoulder. "You've made us all see something today," he said. "Even the hardest hearts in this town couldn't ignore you." The glow of Mara's dress intensified slightly, as if it too felt the joy of the moment. The drones above captured every heartbeat, every pulse of light, every proud smile. The little girl's bravery had sparked something extraordinary, a simple, honest truth that could not be silenced. As the afternoon sun climbed, Mara began to walk toward the edge of the square, letting the townspeople see her fully. She laughed softly at a small child who waved at her, and a few of the villagers even smiled genuinely. Dusthaven, the town that had once mocked her, was starting to shift, and through it all, Lila's voice remained steady, repeating her truth to anyone who would listen. She's beautiful. By the time Mara returned to the town hall to rest before her wedding, she felt a quiet power within her. The words of one small girl had lifted the weight of years of judgment. The whispers of the town had changed, not entirely, but enough to plant a seed of understanding, compassion, and respect. For the first time in her life, Mara realized that beauty was not defined by size, shape, or what the world expected. It was defined by courage, kindness, and the ability to stand tall in the face of ridicule. And sometimes it took the voice of a fearless little child to remind an entire town of that truth. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across Dusthaven, Mara looked out over the square one last time. She could see her reflection in the glowing dress, but it was more than that. She saw herself truly, entirely, without shame or fear, and she smiled, knowing that tomorrow, when she stood at the altar, she would do so with pride, confidence, and a radiant joy that no one could dim. Lila ran to the town's edge, shouting once more, "See, Papa! She's beautiful!" Her words lingered in the warm desert air, a promise and a declaration, and Mara, standing tall and glowing under the twin suns, knew that this was only the beginning of a new way for Dusthaven to see, and for her to shine. The desert winds of Iridia had cooled slightly by the late afternoon, carrying the faint scent of baked sand and distant alien flowers that grew near hidden oases. Dusthaven seemed quieter now, but the air was alive with curiosity. The townspeople who had earlier whispered and laughed at Mara now found themselves reflecting in ways they had never expected. Mara stood at the top of the town hall steps again, the soft glow of her dress pulsing in gentle waves. Each step she took on the wooden platform seemed to echo through the square. She had begun to feel a confidence she had never known. The ridicule of the past was still present, lingering like shadows at the edges of her mind, but the warmth of Lila's courage and the subtle nods from some townsfolk gave her a new strength. Sheriff Jonah walked beside her, his tall frame protective yet relaxed. He had been the town's law for decades, but never before had he witnessed such a quiet revolution. "Look around, Mara," he said softly. "Do you see them? They're beginning to think differently." Mara glanced across the square. People who had been quick to mock now avoided sneering looks, their expressions curious, even hesitant. A group of young women whispered to each other, pointing discreetly at Mara's glowing dress and at the way she carried herself. She's proud," one murmured. "And it suits her." The men, too, were no longer laughing. Some scratched their heads awkwardly, uncertain how to respond. They had expected Mara to shrink, to bow her head in shame, but she did neither. Instead, she walked slowly, her posture straight, her smile gentle but radiant. In the midst of the square, Lila ran ahead and climbed onto a small crate holding her arms wide. "See, everyone? She's beautiful!" she shouted. Her voice carried across the town like a bell, pure and fearless. This simple, innocent declaration carried more power than any argument Mara or Sheriff Jonah could have made. Mara stopped near the center of the square, letting the townspeople fully see her. The light threads woven into her dress began to glow more brightly, responding subtly to her pulse. This was a feature her bridegroom had added, a quiet gift of joy. It created small arcs of gentle light in the sand around her feet, reflecting off the hovering lanterns and the polished surfaces of passing shuttles. Even the normally reserved townsfolk could not help but notice. This is different," whispered an older woman, her voice tinged with awe. "She's glowing, not just from the dress, but from her heart." "Yes," murmured another. "She carries herself like someone who knows her worth. And maybe we've been wrong." The subtle acknowledgement spread like a ripple across the crowd. Dusthaven had been a town where judgment was second nature, where people were quick to mock those who didn't fit their narrow idea of perfection. But Mara, illuminated by the little girl's bravery and the soft light of her dress, showed them something they had not considered. Dignity, kindness, and self-respect could shine brighter than any ridicule. Meanwhile, the hovering drones, which had been quietly recording the town's events, began transmitting the scene across the surrounding settlements. People in distant villages and desert valleys, who had never met Mara, saw her glow and the little girl's fearless voice declaring her beauty. The image of a proud, confident bride in a glowing dress walking through a small frontier town began to spread quietly, almost like a story whispered on the wind. Sheriff Jonah, noticing the wider impact, placed a reassuring hand on Mara's shoulder. "They're seeing you not just here, but beyond Dusthaven," he said, "and they will remember this. Your courage is teaching them something they never thought to learn." Mara felt a mix of awe and determination. The thought that her small act of confidence could reach so far was both thrilling and humbling. She looked down at Lila, who waved excitedly, her small face glowing with pride. "We're making them see, aren't we?" Mara whispered softly. "Yes," Leela said, bouncing slightly on the crate. "They have to see." The townspeople were beginning to reflect on their own behavior. The whispers of mockery were gone, replaced by quiet conversations. Some villagers even approached Mara, hesitant at first to compliment her dress or her smile. It was awkward, but genuine. The simple act of honesty from a little girl had shifted the town's perception. A young man who had been among the harshest critics stepped forward slowly. "Mara," he said, clearing his throat, I'm sorry for laughing before. I didn't understand. I didn't see." Mara nodded gently. "Thank you for saying that," she replied. "That means more than you know." Other townsfolk followed, offering quiet apologies or subtle smiles. Dusthaven was beginning to change, not overnight, but in small, meaningful ways. The town had learned a simple but powerful truth. Beauty and worth were not defined by the narrow expectations of others. The little girl, seeing the shift in the town, clapped her hands and shouted again, louder this time, "See, Papa, I told you!" "She's beautiful." Her words were no longer just a declaration. They were a challenge, a reminder to everyone that courage and honesty could break through years of prejudice. Mara began to speak to the town herself, her voice steady, calm, and radiant. "I know many of you have judged me," she said, letting her words carry across the square. "I know you expected me to be smaller, prettier, or different, but I am who I am. And today I choose to be proud of myself. I hope you can see that my worth is not measured by your expectations, but by the kindness, joy, and courage I carry in my heart." A silence fell over the square. Then, slowly, one by one, villagers began to nod, their expressions softening. A few even applauded quietly, a gesture small but meaningful. Mara felt tears prick at her eyes, not from sadness but from relief, joy, and an overwhelming sense of acceptance. The drones above continued to record, capturing every pulse of light, every proud smile, every gesture of understanding. Mara's courage, amplified by the innocence of a child, was becoming a lesson not just for Dusthaven, but for anyone who would watch the broadcast. Lila ran to Mara's side, holding her hand tightly. "They're listening to us," she said, her eyes wide. "They understand." Mara laughed softly, her heart full. "Yes, they are, little one, and you've helped me show them." The sun began to lower, casting long, warm shadows across the square. Dusthaven looked different now, not just in the light, but in the hearts of its people. Mara had walked through their judgment and come out shining. The little girl's bravery had reminded everyone that true beauty is courage, kindness, and the ability to be oneself, no matter what others think. Even the town's most skeptical villagers could not deny it. Mara's glow was more than the light of her dress. It was the light of self-respect, confidence, and joy. It was contagious, spreading quietly, imperceptibly, yet powerfully through every corner of the square. Sheriff Jonah stepped forward, his pride plain on his face. "You've done something remarkable today, Mara," he said. "Not just for yourself, but for all of us. We've all learned from you, and from her," he added, nodding toward Lila. Mara knelt to hug the little girl, feeling a warmth that went beyond gratitude. "Yes, little one," she said softly. "We've changed things today, and tomorrow we will continue to shine, together." As the twin suns dipped lower behind the desert cliffs, Mara looked out across Dusthaven. The town was no longer the same. People were talking quietly, smiling more, reflecting on their own actions and judgments. Mara felt a deep sense of peace. Her walk, her courage, and Lila's fearless words had left an imprint on the town, a gentle, lasting change. And in that quiet moment, as the soft glow of her dress reflected the colors of the setting suns, Mara realized something extraordinary. She was no longer walking for herself alone. She was walking for every person who had ever felt judged, for every voice that had ever been silenced, and for every heart that had needed to believe in true beauty. Lila ran ahead, shouting one last time, "She's beautiful, always beautiful." And Mara, feeling the joy and courage that flowed from the little girl, smiled fully, knowing that the future, both for her and for Dusthaven, was brighter than she had ever imagined. The sky over Dusthaven was painted in soft shades of orange and violet as the twin suns began to set. Their light reflected on the desert sand, turning it into a warm sea of gold. The town square had been transformed for the wedding. Floating lanterns hovered gently above, casting soft glimmers of color across the wooden streets. Holographic decorations shimmered faintly, projecting delicate patterns of flowers and stars that swirled lightly in the evening breeze. For the first time, the people of Dusthaven felt a sense of wonder, as if the town itself had taken a deep breath and opened its heart. Mara adjusted her glowing dress one last time. The light threads pulsed softly, almost as if they were alive, echoing the rhythm of her heartbeat. She could feel a quiet strength in her chest, the courage that had grown over the last few days, now shining fully. The whispers and laughter of the past had faded, replaced with a warm, supportive hum of anticipation. The townspeople who had once mocked her now stood respectfully, watching, their expressions soft and reflective. Lila ran up beside her, tiny hands clutching Mara's fingers. "You're ready," she said, her voice full of pride. "Everyone knows it now. They see what I told them." Mara smiled, kneeling slightly to meet the little girl's eyes. "Yes, they do. And it's thanks to you." She felt a warmth that went beyond the soft glow of her dress, a deep gratitude for the child who had reminded everyone, including herself, of the true meaning of beauty. Sheriff Jonah, standing beside them, placed a hand on Mara's shoulder. "You've changed Dusthaven, Mara," he said softly. "Not just today, but forever. People will remember this. They'll remember how you walked with courage and joy." Mara nodded, feeling her chest swell with pride. The thought of walking down the aisle to her bridegroom no longer brought fear or doubt. Instead, it brought excitement. She was not just a bride, she was a symbol of confidence, of the power of kindness and truth. The crowd began to move as the bridegroom arrived. He stepped forward, a kind smile lighting his face, his eyes shining as he took in Mara's radiant glow. He was tall and strong, dressed in simple frontier attire, mixed with subtle futuristic armor that reflected the soft lights above. But it was not his appearance that mattered. It was the love and respect he held for Mara, clear in the gentle way he extended his hand to her. Mara walked toward him slowly, Lila skipping ahead, pointing proudly at the bride as she passed. The townspeople watched in awe. Even those who had been harsh critics in the past could not look away. There was something transformative in the way Mara carried herself, in the gentle glow of her dress, and in the warmth that radiated from her heart. The ceremony began simply, without grand speeches or formalities. Sheriff Jonah gave a quiet blessing, his voice steady and full of emotion. "Today we witnessed not just a union, but a celebration of courage, love, and the truth of who we are." Mara's bridegroom took her hands, their fingers intertwining. "Mara," he said softly, "you are more beautiful than any words could describe. Today we begin a new life together, and I promise to honor you always, for who you are inside and out." Tears pricked Mara's eyes, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming joy of being seen and loved fully. The crowd was silent, watching, sensing the significance of the moment. Even the wind seemed to pause, carrying the scent of desert flowers and the warmth of the twin suns across the square. Lila, sitting on a low crate nearby, clapped her hands excitedly. "See? I told you, she's beautiful." Her voice rang across the square, a reminder of the courage it takes to speak the truth. The vows were simple, but heartfelt. Mara spoke of love, respect, and the courage it took to be herself. Her bridegroom spoke of admiration, partnership, and joy in every small moment together. There were no grand promises of riches or power, only promises of loyalty, kindness, and the simple beauty of shared life. As the final words of the ceremony were spoken, the hovering lanterns above began to rise, glowing softly and trailing ribbons of light in the evening air. The drones captured the moment, transmitting it quietly across the settlements of Iridia. People in distant towns who had only heard whispers of Dusthaven's small frontier miracle now saw it unfold live. A glowing bride, a proud little girl, and a town learning to see differently. The crowd erupted in applause, not out of formality, but from genuine admiration. Mara and her bridegroom smiled, holding each other's hands tightly. The light from Mara's dress reflected in their eyes, a soft glow that seemed to fill the entire square with warmth. Children ran around, waving small flags and laughing. Adults smiled, some wiping tears from their eyes. Even the oldest, most skeptical members of Dusthaven nodded, understanding finally that beauty was not in size or shape, but in courage, kindness, and the joy of being true to oneself. After the ceremony, the celebration began. Music from hovering instruments filled the square with gentle, lively melodies. Holographic projections of desert flowers swirled and danced in the air. Mara laughed freely, her dress casting soft light across the sand. She danced with her bridegroom, moving gracefully, unafraid, completely herself. Lila ran around, showing everyone her own small dances and giggles. She had become a symbol of bravery, a reminder that even the smallest voice can make the largest impact. People watched her with smiles, remembering how a child had reminded them to see the truth in someone's heart. Mara's father, Sheriff Jonah, watched proudly from the sidelines. He had always protected Mara in the physical sense, keeping the town safe from dangers, but today he saw her strength in a new light. She had not needed him to defend her from the ridicule. She had done it herself, with the help of a little girl's fearless voice. The townspeople mingled, offering congratulations and honest admiration. Some approached Mara to speak quietly. "I see now," said one woman. "You're beautiful not because of what we expected, but because of who you are." A man added, I understand now. We've been blind." Mara smiled warmly at each person, her heart full. She had never imagined that her wedding day could be so much more than a personal celebration. It had become a lesson for her entire town. And she had learned as well that courage, kindness, and honesty could shine brighter than any judgment or expectation. As night fell, the twin moons rose in the sky, casting a soft silver light over the desert. The glow from Mara's dress had dimmed slightly, but it remained warm and steady, like a heartbeat. She stood in the square, looking around at the people who had once mocked her, now smiling and celebrating her joy. Lila ran to her again, jumping into her arms. "See, Mara? Everyone sees it now." Mara laughed softly, hugging the little girl tightly. "Yes, they do. And it's all thanks to you." The bridegroom joined them, placing a gentle hand on Mara's shoulder. "You've changed more than just our lives today," he said. "You've changed Dust Haven, Mara, and it will never be the same again." The celebration continued late into the night. Music, laughter, and joy filled the air. Mara danced with her bridegroom, walked among the townspeople, and shared quiet smiles with those who had learned the courage to apologize and admire openly. Dust Haven had learned something important, to see others as they truly were, and to celebrate beauty in all its forms. Finally, as the night grew deep and quiet, Mara and her bridegroom rode their hoverbikes toward the edge of the desert. Dust kicked up in glowing trails behind them, reflecting the soft colors of the celebration lights. Mara's dress still shimmered faintly, glowing with the quiet power of confidence, courage, and joy. Lila waved from the square, shouting one last time, "See, Papa? She's beautiful." Mara smiled, holding her bridegroom's hand tightly. The desert stretched endlessly before them, filled with possibilities, hope, and the promise of new beginnings. And under the twin moons of Iridia, Mara knew that she had not just walked into her wedding. She had walked into a life where she could shine fully, proudly, and without fear. And in the hearts of everyone in Dust Haven, the lesson remained. True beauty is courage, kindness, and the ability to stand tall and shine, no matter what anyone else says.